We've got a lot of really exciting things that we're working on in the NSGIC 3DEP for the Nation program. Again, NSGIC 3DEP for the Nation exists to support state LiDAR acquisition. NSGIC is a member organization comprised of state GIOs and industry participants to further general geospatial activity across the country. And the NSGIC 3DEP for the Nation program exists to help align state and USGS activities in the collection of LiDAR and the availability of that LiDAR to constituents and the public. So as part of that program, we are currently combining the 3DEP planning guide to help states with their LiDAR acquisition plans and strategies into an overarching 3D NTM planning guide to include hydrography. And I'm adding a special emphasis on demonstrating value to support funding efforts. This is something that regularly comes up as a primary point of concern for states, is how are we going to support the funding efforts to collect and process and make available this data that has huge impacts across the economy and the environment. So that's a big thrust of what we're working on. To support that, working on producing content and resources to raise awareness around the 3DEP program, especially among stakeholders that can control purse strings and those who can do really cool things with this data. So the 3DEP one-pager has been published. That's the graphic over here on the right. This is the first page of that one-pager. It's meant to be front and back. You can find that on the NSGIC knowledge base. So go ahead and check that out if you'd like to share this with your community. This is a little resource we put together to help folks understand the impact that 3DEP data is having and what data refresh really means and the value that it will do, that it will compound, right? And there's a longer term project really trying to dial in the quantification of 3DEP value. The Dewberry and USGS and NOAA collaborated on an awesome resource, the benefits and requirements study. The value there was a little squishy, so we're trying to figure out if we can come up with a little more robust and specific way to measure value. And part of that, a big part of that, will be understanding the use cases and who is actually working with this data to solve problems. A couple of other things we're working on in the background, working with states. I just met with Leslie Jones, the GIO of Alaska, and we're going to be working together to come up with a state LiDAR and imagery assessment and profile to share with states so that they can get a really good view into how other states are managing their programs, establishing their strategies, and executing their plans, so that we can not only collaborate and improve the availability of this data, but also make moves to understanding where any gaps are and communicating those gaps and recommendations to USGS so that we can improve the efficiency of the program and really put this data to great use. A big element of that will be modernizing the NSGIC 3DEP for the Nation hub on the NSGIC website. I'm currently in the process of doing that. I expect to release in mid-August, and it'll have a more modern feel. It'll align with the current hydrography hub and make it a little bit easier to follow along and navigate. And that's building on the excellent work of Phil Worrell, the previous 3DEP for the Nation engineer. And so that's what we're going. That's what a couple of things that we're working on the NSGIC side of things. I did want to include this slide here to give an idea of the overarching theme of what we're doing on the NSGIC 3DEP for the Nation side of things. So the overarching goal of the 3DEP program is to improve life-saving, environment-conserving, and economic building decision-making with high-quality nationwide LiDAR. Now, these are my words. I've kind of synthesized a lot of the 3DEP materials coming out of USGS into this overarching goal, because really at the end of the day, it's about the impact that this data has on communities and economies. And the difference we can make in improving in lives. So to do that, we need to make sure the program continues. So we'll need to secure sustainable funding. It's a big priority for states. To secure sustainable funding, we must demonstrate value. And to demonstrate value, NSGIC 3DEP for the Nation is making a concerted effort to champion diverse use cases. And so that's what we're going to be doing today is we're going to hear from Chuck Knox from Knox Geological LLC. I'm going to introduce him in the project in just a moment, but I did see someone in the chat drop in. If anyone has any questions before we go into the speaker, I would love to hear them. Okay, I see someone dropped a question in the chat. When will 3DEP data be available to download for updated areas? The map covers almost whole US, but data on AWS is not available for that yet. Okay, so that's a great question. So I'm going to hop back over to this map here. If my computer will allow me to. So on this map, deciphering this map, the orange areas are slated for collection over the next months, if not years. The light green areas, those are either currently underway or in progress. And so that data, that updated data is either being acquired or is processing. So it could take take months or years for that data to be publicly available, depending on the QA/QC process. USGS runs a really thorough quality control process to ensure that the data meets the spec, and sometimes that requires recollection. So depending on the AOI, you can see what is or is not available. The best resource for that is the National Elevation Inventory through the NOAA website. I will grab a link for that and drop it in the chat for the gentleman who asked that, or the individual. I'm not sure if it was a gentleman, sorry. So that is the Interagency Elevation Inventory. That will have the most updated and data available, and you can check that out at the link I just dropped into the chat. And the dark green covers a lot. We have this same individual. Dark green covers a lot that's not available. If you are having trouble finding the dark green data sets online, go ahead and shoot me an email and I can get to the bottom of that. The best place to start that investigation is the National Inventory. Okay, great. Does anybody else have any questions as it relates to USGS updates or NSGIC project updates? All right, cool. Well, I've got a really exciting presentation lined up for today. Chuck Knox from Knox Geological Survey, or Knox Geological LLC, is joining us today. Chuck is an entrepreneur and innovator. He's been working with 3DEP data since before, or LiDAR data on a national basis since before the project inception, and he's really seen the evolution of the 3DEP program come from its nascent stages where it was hard to find data into its maturity today where almost 100% of the country is covered. He's developed a really novel use case for leveraging LiDAR data to improve oil and gas exploration, reducing the impacts that exploration has, and improving the efficiency of that fundamental aspect of energy in our economy. So I'm going to hand it off to Chuck, and then I'll return back with some reminders. Actually, I'll hit the reminders now. That way we don't forget. We got a state team meeting coming up. The biggest reminder is that webinar on August 7th. And then we have a few other NSGIC specific activities going on, especially the September annual conference in San Antonio. Hopefully we'll see you there. If you're there, I'd love to meet you. Chuck, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share and let you share your presentation. Thanks for joining us today, Chuck. I'm really excited to have you. I must mention, Chuck is not just an innovator and a technology enthusiast. He's a really cool guy who's generally and genuinely interested in improving the state of affairs for folks by sharing open data and allowing folks to collaborate on it. So with that, I'll pass it off to you, Chuck. And looking forward to hearing how you're using 3DEP data.
Okay. Let me see screen one. Okay. Let me get this set up. Okay, is it up?
Yes, sir. Looks good.
All right, very good. So, Jordan, I want to thank you for paying attention to what I do, and I kind of I work. We're a small group. I've been doing this by myself for about since 2010. So I work isolated from other groups, and I kind of like that. So if I get kind of an exciting thing, I can work on it myself and just kind of see where it goes fruition. And we've really come to some really exciting stuff. And the LiDAR data is, I like it because it is just beautiful, pure data. It never lies to me. With the 3DEP behind it, I know I've got good data to work with. And as an explorer, every time a raster pops up, it's an image that no one has ever seen before. So, so we're breaking new ground with every raster we run. So here's kind of my journey into LiDAR and how we're using it now. Like I said, my background is a geologist in oil and gas exploration, and it's really turned into, I work in oil and gas to run LiDAR now. So it's been a fascinating journey, and I love the product. So the focus of this presentation here is I want to talk about the portal, the USGS 3DP portal, LiDAR in oil and natural gas exploration, how it fits in. And I have kind of a timeline of how I started in this and where we're ended up right now. And where we're ended up now is we're layering LiDAR in with satellite data and machine learning, and we're using machine learning as an exploration tool, and we're having pretty good success with it. And we're going to show a little bit about that. The strength of LiDAR, in my opinion, is the digital nature of the data. You get this XYZ for a point on the planet, and it gives you such an opportunity to study it. When you put a billion of these points together, then you can really start triangulation between each point, and you can learn a lot about the surface. We can classify the surface from bare earth to buildings to bridges to roads to trees, birds. I mean, we can pick out everything, and once we classify it, then we can make models of the surface. And I'm dealing with bare earth is what I deal with for the most part. I just look at number 2 or bare earth, and that's the only thing I'm looking at. And as Martin Eisenberg then said, he says, once you've got that, then you can do spatial indexing of the Earth's surface, and then we can start asking it questions and doing work with it. When I first started with Indiana's survey in 2011, they were starting to get that first survey up and running. They divided it into three surveys, and the first survey was up and running. And it was very difficult to get the LAS file and use it for me. I struggled with that. So the portal we had at that point in time was Open Topography. And so I would use Open Topography, and I was downloading finished data, and everything was a hill shaded image, and they were small tiles, and so we're piecing tiles together. But then once I made the jump to ArcMap, then I was starting to work with the 3D elevation program and trying to put the two together. And we were struggling to do that until we had the bridge to do that. And that last tool is Martin Eisenberg's invention of the LAZ file is what really changed everything for me. So I could now download an LAZ file from the 3D elevation program because they were using the LAZ file. And then ArcMap, then they had actually got Martin's toolbox, and so now I could really download the data, uncompress it, and then use it in ArcMap. So that was a big step for me. Was Martin put together. You guys know all this. This is show you the 3D elevation program and what it's for. But what I want to show is this, and this is the 2013 map of what was available to me when I got started in this. And you know, if you worked the Illinois Basin out there, it was a crapshoot if you were going to be able to have LiDAR data out there. And so Iowa, Minnesota, Ohio was one of the first adopters. By now in 2013, Indiana survey was up and running. So it's becoming more and more available all the time. And when this thing started, you know, everybody was talking about, you know, the USGS, there's no way they're going to be able to get, you know, 100% of the continental United States. And I am just damn proud of the USGS for what they've done and how they've come about. And you look at today's map, and you know, granted, there's still some holes to get out there, but we've come a long way. And like I said, I'm proud of the USGS and now the 3DEP program to get this thing up and running. So currently, I want to talk a little bit about oil exploration and how I'm using LiDAR. 2D and 3D seismic is currently the best predictor of hydrocarbons. And we are really making great strides in 2 and 3D seismic. You know, seismic before with the reflections, we were just looking for structure is all we were looking for. And that seemed to work well for a lot of the formations. But as we get rid of the big structures, we drill those up. Now we're looking for stratigraphy. We're looking for the inner dynamics of the rock. And we're looking to see, does that porosity then, does that carry hydrocarbons? And 2 and 3D seismic they're getting very good at this. They've made great strides in the past year or two, as in with the AVOs, you know, picking out where the hydrocarbons are. What happens is it is a very expensive reconnaissance tool. So if you want to run 2D seismic over a large area, it's going to cost you a certain amount to run the seismic. And then you have tidal work that you have to do. You have lease work you have to do to get these options. And so, you know, it's a two-headed monster on that the costs are astronomical to use it as a reconnaissance tool. So my goal is to how can I leverage LiDAR and satellite data in a machine learning environment to help predict the occurrence of petroleum. And this is all it is a prediction. And how do we get and locate these areas where we don't have to run huge amounts of 2 and 3D seismic as a reconnaissance tool? So my goal then is exploration with no boots on the ground. You go back and there have been surface indications of hydrocarbon. I call it a legacy of discovery. You know, and you go back to Frank Melton's work in the 20s, P.H. Blanchet's, Lawrence Latman's work, Lloyd Fahn's work, and there are indications on the surface of subsurface oil and gas. And so what we want to do is, can we quantify these? Can we get them into a digital model? And then can we take that digital model and make it work in a machine learning environment? And that's what we've been working on. Stream flow is an indicator. That goes back to Colonel Drake and, you know, the Oil Creek work. And stream flow has always been seen as an indicator of faults and fractures. A lot of the oil and gas formations, the porosity is derived from water flow in these faults and fractures. And so they are a good indicator of what we can see underground is the stream flow. And what we can do, I can then use my LiDAR data then to model these and then find out what indicator works for us in the machine learning program. Surface indications of hydrocarbons are also important. And that goes back way back. And there's too many, there are too numerous to mention as to great oil and gas fields that were found with surface indications of hydrocarbons, whether it's methane seeps that actually are lightable, to that route, or actually oil seeps that come up. And I've been working with Robert Schaefer and his work on Sentinel-2 and his multispectral work on surface indication of methane, we have found to be a very good layer to use in the machine learning. We also have Lloyd Fahn's work of surface temperature variations. These oil zones tend to be insulators, and so we end up with a cool spot on the planet above these oil formations. And we can pick that up with Landsat 9. So we tend to focus on Landsat 9. Landsat 8 had a little bit of light leakage issues, and they're having to do a little more work with 8. And so we're fairly comfortable with Landsat 9. And so we're using Landsat 9. We can break out land surface temperature out of that, and then we can actually run a raw band 10. And these are the layers that we're using in our machine learning. And it's pretty fascinating results. So now I want to go through kind of my timeline in the search for oil using LiDAR. This goes back to 2010. And I had a chance meeting with Pete Kalash, who was with the Iowa Geologic Survey, and his wife, Patricia Knox, was doing genealogy, and I ended up with the family Bible and the family genealogy chest. And she called and asked if she could come by and take a look at it. I said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so I had never met him before. And then Pete comes in, and I'm talking to him. I ask him what he does. And he says, well, I'm a geologist with the Iowa Geological Survey. I go, oh, okay. So now we've got something to talk about. I go, what do you do? And he says, I work with the LiDAR program. And I had never heard of LiDAR before at that point in time. And he's trying to explain it to me. And he could tell I was not grasping. And he goes, tell you what, you got a computer? I go, yeah, we've got one here. So he gets onto the website and he pulls up these hill-shaded images of these archaeological sites in eastern Iowa. And it just, it blew me away as to the bare earth nature and what you could see with this. And and then you combine that with the photogeology work I had been doing, and these two collided, and I've never looked back from there. So let's go back to 2010. So this was my first real project I put together. And like I said, I was using open topography. None of this is geo-referenced. It's just a mess, but I got the Royal Center gas storage field. I was able to, copy an image of that and paste it in Canvas, I know where the fault is there, so put that in. And I could actually see an image of a lineation that I marked in this pink here. And it's not my best work by any means, but it was a start for us. And so this is where it started in 2010. So in 2012, 2013, I now have ArcMap. I can start, downloading LAS files and building LAS data sets. I was using these terrain data sets at the time, and it was still just analog data, but I was starting to make some correlations on it. So I was working in the second Trenton oil pay. And I was noticing that the oil wells in the second Trenton pay were lining up pretty nice with areas of higher slope angle. And I fell pretty hard for slope angle. I did a lot of slope angle work out here. And then we ended up, and this project then sold to Monarch Crest Minerals out of Denver. And the geologist there liked what I was doing, and his name was Randy Billingsley. And so Randy and I worked together Monarch spent a bunch of money on an aeromag survey with radiometrics. And what we did is he was just a wizard at ArcMap. And so we were working through the spatial statistics, and we had our known oil wells, and we were seeing what signature lined up nicely with them. And so I was voting on, I just knew slope angle was going to be it. And slope angle was not it. It was a mess. The signature didn't match. None of the radiometrics matched. The only thing that matched, and it matched almost perfectly, was stream density. And so I carried that with me. The project ended up, and they dropped it. They never did follow through on it. But I did know that stream density and oil wells had a great correlation. And that's what I brought forward into the machine learning. And that came out. That's where the LiDAR then can help us in that with flow accumulation. By 2015, I'm now starting to put rasters together, and I can then take a transparent raster and throw it over a hillshade and get some nice looking 3D images at this point. Here's the Glen Airfield. It's a Devonian drape over a Silurian reef, and this was just a powerful little oil field down there in southwestern Indiana. Now, here, we talk about Indiana's survey, and they ran it in 3 flights, and it took them 3 years to put this thing together. And then I believe it was Robert Johnson. That's the name that sticks in my mind. A young kid who put this map together in the first DEM of the state of Indiana. And this really got me to correlate the subsurface with the surface. And you look up in this area, here's the Wabash River. And you track the Wabash as it flows to the west, and then it hits this area, and it makes this turn, and then it makes another turn south right here. So we've got this nice lineation here. And then we have, this is the Packerton Moraine, or the Packerton Ridge is what it is. As the ice flows, we had 2 great ice masses. The Erie lobe came from the east down here and laid up against here, and the Saginaw lobe from the north, and they met here, and they dropped a large amount of debris here, creating this feature right here. Well, I know by knowing the domain and knowing the Precambrian and knowing this area, I know that this is the spot of a continental crust contact. Over 1.6 billion years ago, the crushing of 2 continents came together, and it was pretty much right here in northern Indiana. And so this line, there's a line, the pre-Indy 1600 intercontinental crust runs from Canada all the way down to Mexico. And this, as it crosses northern Indiana, you can see it lines up with the Packerton Moraine. And so this, we've seen the fault on seismic here. It's a huge thrust fault that is not really reactivated, but it has movement with the moon pulling on the earth, the earth tides, and this thing flexes a couple times a day, and it creates an energy that comes to the surface. Same thing here. It created a channel for the stream flow of the Wabash right here. So we have evidence of a 1.6 billion year old feature having influence on a 16,000 year old surface. And so this is a continuing process all the time of the subsurface and the surface in contact. And you can't separate one from the other. Just as you look at your fingers, you notice the fingers in space because of the skin around it. And so, this Earth skin is so important to us, and that's where LiDAR comes in, and we can image this surface. So by 2017, I started. I took the work that Randy Billingsley and I had done about stream density, and I started wanting to work more with stream flow and as to what we can tell. And I started getting into reef hunting and looking for these reefs that would actually show on the surface as a feature. And like I said, this goes all the way back to Frank Melton, where you would have a hard core of a reef, and it would actually manifest on the surface, and you would see stream flow radiating around the reef, diverting from the reef. This is the kind of work I was doing in 2017. And this is up for a project I did in the southern reef trend of the Michigan basin. This was over a 4-county area. And what I did then is I marked over the 4 counties where I saw a flow accumulation signature. So I'm using flow accumulation on this, and I would go through, run my digital elevation model. And then from that, then I could go through hydrology, and then get my flow direction, and then flow accumulation, and then have a digital representation of stream flow then, and then I mark them accordingly. So if I take out my DEMs, now I have my flow accumulation signatures, and then I can put in where the oil wells are, and they line up really well with the flow accumulation signatures. So this would give one a chance to go out and maybe shoot some 2D over some of these reefs and see if you could pick something up. So here's the you put the fields in, and this I really like the way this project went together. Now, this is what I've been working on recently. This information is about 2 years old, and I don't understand it all yet. I'm trying to figure out what it is, but what it is, you work with aspect on this. And let me go over here, I want to go over to as to how I do this. And so I take the aspect, and aspect is the direction of slope, is all it is. It doesn't have anything to do with the amount of slope, elevation. It's just the direction of slope. And then what I do is I break it down into 8 different components. And so that gives me north, northeast, east, southeast, and down through, so you come back to 360 degrees in there. What I want to do is I want to take out 7/8 of the data, and I black it out, is what I do. And I want to illuminate this from one direction. And so I can then illuminate it from the north, northeast, whichever one I want. And I'm finding that when I illuminate from the source of the great push from the southeast, I get some very interesting images of the surface. So this one we're calling a digital slope direction model is what this is. And as you can see, it has nothing to do with elevation. It's all about illuminating from the surface. And I want to zoom in down in this area down here. Now this is southern Wells County, Indiana. And I'll go in and I like marking lineaments. So let me go through and just mark these, how I would mark them. And as you can see these lineaments quite clearly with this. So when I talk about seeing the fingerprints of the earth, this is what I'm talking about, this digital slope direction model. And this is on the northern side of the old Indiana field, where the faults and fractures were very important in that. So this works well as a base for and for putting a DEM over the top of it, and it gives some great looking images. So let me get rid of this. Okay, that. Okay, now I want to go into what we're doing in machine learning and the exploration of oil and natural gas. And I've got 3 different areas where we work. So we did a study for Troy Tittlemeyer down in Medina County, Texas, just west of San Antonio in the Austin Chalk. We've got a reef hunting exercise in Marion County, Illinois, and then also some hydrothermal dolomites in Steuben County in the Michigan Basin. So here's the Austin Chalk, and the chalk is a carbonate, highly fractured, that it dips to the south, and so as you go south, you get more oil accumulation, and as you go to the north, there's a outcrop, and you lose the oil accumulation. So in our machine learning, it's a very binary choice. It's either, is there a presence of oil or is there an absence of oil? So each pixel then will say, okay, I vote for presence or I vote for absence is what I vote for. And as you can see here, to the south of this line is where it voted for the presence of oil, which that's where the oil is on there. And if you know the Austin Chalk, this is a very good image of the Austin Chalk. And so this was the first one that really came together for us, where we can actually correlate our predictions with what's going on the subsurface. So you have a predicted absence of oil to the north and a predicted presence of oil to the south. So I want to go now to Marion County, Illinois, and this is the land of big reefs out here. These wells are prolific oil producers, but they are hard to find out there. It's expensive to run 2D everywhere, and so we're fighting and trying to pick out areas to work in. We came up with a program. This is the flow accumulation signatures that we saw back up in Calhoun County, the Michigan Basin, up in that area. So I marked all of the flow accumulation signatures in Marion County that that stood out to me, and we picked 10 out of them, and we picked these 10 to run 2D seismic over. So if we figure, if we can just get one of these to show up as a reef underneath with the 2D, we'll be doing well. Every reef, pretty much without exception, has a flow accumulation signature above it, but not every flow accumulation signature has a reef underneath it. And so that's the rub. So you got to look at a lot of these. You got to kiss a lot of toads here before you find that prince. And so we ran 2D over each one of these, and by God, we found one. This one up here in the northeast part was the only one we found that had evidence of hydrocarbons. Not quite sure if it's a reef or not, but it had evidence of hydrocarbons in the Devonian. So we did a prediction, a machine learning prediction over this. And this is the signatures we came up with. And it seems like that when you get in an area of strong oil accumulation, the signatures are a little more crisp, and they tend to come, they show up a little bit better for you. And so I want to put in now where our 2D lines were, and you see each one of these that we did not get a signature on. That we did not, in our 2D lines, we didn't see anything. We did not get a signature on, except this one right here. And this is the one we're still working on getting this one put together. If I would now do this, I would forego the
Hey, Chuck,
yes, sir.
I'm still seeing slide 19 of Medina on there. I don't know if you've moved on from that slide or if my computer is just a little behind.
Are you caught up yet?
No, it's still showing slide 19.
You want to go ahead and refresh?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right. Let's see if I can do that. Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was my internet for a minute, but it sounds like folks in the chat are also seeing that.
All right. Let me start on this one. Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense then. Okay, are you on slide 20?
Not yet. Maybe try stopping your share and re-engaging it.
All right. That help you?
Let me see if I can boot your sharing.
And we're almost done too.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think your
Thanks for
last slides
sticking
are,
with me, everybody.
your last slides are some of the best ones though. I've seen these. So go ahead and see if you can reshare.
Okay.
And
No, I'm not responding.
are the last slides changed from the presentation you sent me?
Okay. How's that?
There you go. Great.
Okay. 20. So let me redo it a little bit here. We ran a flow accumulation model over the county to pick out potential spots. And okay, there we go. And we picked out 10 of these signatures. Mostly we picked these because they had good road access where we could run the road lines over the top of it. And these are the 10 that we picked out. And then it was up in the northeast part. This project right here was the one that 2D showed us that we had oil accumulations in the Devonian is what we were looking for. Not necessarily a reef, but we were seeing oil accumulations in there. Here is our predicted surface. Remember, black is the presence of petroleum and red is the absence of petroleum. And we're getting some, very nice signatures in Marion County. Let's put in our 2D lines, and remember, of the 10, the only one that we saw that had any hint of hydrocarbons in the Devonian, and that's what we trained this to, was the Devonian, was this one right up here. So as I go forward with these projects, I'm going to lean more and more on the machine learning and not so much just the LiDAR-derived flow accumulation models, because instead of spending my money on all 10 of these out in the hinterlands, if I would have run a survey like this, I think we would have had a lot more success. Okay, here's the last project. This is our in the Michigan Basin, northeast part of the state of Indiana. Here's 4 counties up here: Steuben, LaGrange, Noble, and DeKalb counties. And this is right across where that 1600 line, where we're looking at the Packerton there, the Packerton moraine. The base of what I'm using for that map, the digital slope elevation map, is the digital slope direction model. And I want to show you, there's a few things. This area is also it's in a failed Precambrian rift. There's a lot of volcanics out in this area in the Precambrian. And we see in our area right here, we're seeing some circles build up here that very well might be volcanics in this area. So these are showing up on the surface. There's a nice one right here. Let me change the color. Let's go to red. And then you can see this 1600 line and the great fault that goes with it comes across. There we go. Down through here. There's another associated fault that runs down through here. Then we've got a third one that runs down through here. We've got a series of wrench faults, which are extremely important to us. And we can track these things over great distances with this digital slope direction model. This is it's been a very useful tool for me in looking for lineaments. Most of these features were formed under the ice. You get some areas that you can tell that the melting water had destroyed it. We get into areas, say down in Texas, that didn't have any glaciation, and it's all pretty much stream flow is what's causing these. So let me get rid of this. And so now I want to show you how I create that digital slope elevation map. And so what I do is I take that raster image, colorized raster image, and then I 45% transparency, and I throw it over the top is what I do. And these are just, I love the look of these images. It gives you this crystalline image. And this, I kind of know that the digital slope direction model has a correlation to the DEM because they match up so nicely. They work very well together. So let me move on to our predicted surface. And so this was, we ran this one. Again, black is the predicted presence of petroleum, and red is the absence of petroleum. And there was something here, and I just, circles always amaze me when I see these things. When I can draw a circle, that's pretty darn important. And so I want you to look at this one. Let me see, there nope. Let me get another color. Yeah, let's see if that'll work. There we go. You look at this huge circle right here. It comes up here, and then I lose it at that point right there. And again, there was a lot of volcanics in this area, so we maybe seeing the results of a Precambrian caldera in the area too. So we've got a lot to learn about this tool and the geology of the area. So okay, let me get back here. All right, what I want to look at is this area up here in Ashley. I've been working this Ashley area for a while. There's known oil wells in the area. It's highly fractured. If you don't get into the main fracture, you're just not going to make a well out of it. And so it's important to actually try to image something that has porosity to it. And so I'm pretty confident this machine learning is going to help get us in the area. So here's a little town of Ashley, and here's our digital slope direction model. And I want to again do some pointers on here. And we've got a nice cross in the Ashley area. Let me change that color. That's not a very good color. There we go. You got a nice cross here, and those are important out in our area. You've got wrench folding going through here, through here. So a lot of faulting to look at in the area. Let me get rid of this. And the Ashley area, the box we saw before was up here on that cross I showed you up there. Earlier, it was probably 10 years ago, we ran a soil gas analysis in the area, and the soil gas we gave us an indication of hydrocarbons in the Ashley area right here. And as you can see, they tend to follow this digital slope direction model. It's got a cross right here, and then it comes up through here and up on that area. We ran a small little 3D that showed porosity over this area right there, and then that lines up well with this cross, this thrust fault right here as well. Now here's our predicted surface, and as you can see, we've got a nice black indicator of hydrocarbons in this area right here. I want to put in the negative oil, positive gas, the soil gas analysis right here, and that fits quite nicely with that as well. And then there's our 3D of that. So final thought. So that was my 3 projects, but I really want to go back to the use of LiDAR and how we're using it. And it is so important to have a digital tool that we can run through our machine learning. And LiDAR is that perfect digital tool that we can use. So with remote sensing of the Earth's surface, by combining LiDAR and satellite data in a machine learning environment, I am confident it will be an important and cost-saving tool in the exploration of oil and natural gas. And so, as I say, embrace the laser and see the fingerprints of the Earth. And I want to thank you guys for battling through to the end of this thing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chuck. Chuck, are you available for questions if anyone has them?
Sure.
Awesome. Does anyone have any questions for Chuck? I've got a few, but I want to give the audience a chance first. Let's see, any hands? Let me monitor. Great. All right, now Chuck, I'm going to challenge. Did I see a hand here? Oh, Abby sends some claps. Thank you, Abby.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate that.
Now, something I'm going to make a staple of these types of presentations, and I really love this as one of the first, if not the first, Chuck, because you have such a history with using this data. Is what do you see as the ultimate value that this analysis tool can provide, and how does that impact folks who might not have ever heard of LiDAR, who might not know anything about geospatial? Like, if you're talking to someone on the street and said, hey, this is why this matters, what kind of message would you give them?
Well, you look at my portion of the oil and gas industry is it's called conventional. For the most part, the unconventional is a mining process where it doesn't take any exploration, where technology has now advanced to the point where we can actually cut the failure rate down to a very minimum with this going forward. So I think the most important thing for us is that it is a useful tool to provide a fuel that keeps us running. Our modern society depends on accessible, low-cost fuel. And we have an abundant amount of that available to us in these conventional plays. Seismic was always looking for structure before. Now we can look at the inner components of the rock with the 2 and 3D seismic. So the LiDAR then gets us in the ballpark. The 2 and 3D seismic then finds, the 2D seismic finds the base fat, and 3D then finds home plate to where we can drill these wells and make successful wells out of them. So I think it's a way to logically attack these conventional oil and gas formations.
Awesome. Another thing I really love about your use is it really demonstrates that, LiDAR, it's more than just a point cloud, right? That's just the foundation of the analysis. And You really showed that by combining multi-sensor data, multi-temporal data, and in feeding that through machine learning, you can't just stop at a point cloud. You need to continue on and create those other products. We got a hand from Abby Gleason. Abby, what's up?
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the presentation today. I just wanted to go back a little bit. You talked about the digital slope direction model that you create, and I might have missed a little bit of the discussion on how to create those. It appeared to me to be sort of an aspect model. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that's exactly it. So are you're familiar with ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro?
Yes.
Okay, and so it's you just go in and then run the aspect tool in Surface, and then they give you like 12 different directions is what they do with that tool. So it's a very easy way to do it. And then what I do, and so instead of 12, I break it down to 8 is what I break it down to, and that gives me the 4 cardinal directions and then the off directions then too. And so whichever way you want to look at this, that's the direction you keep white and highlighted. Everything else then goes black. And let me zoom in on this again. And then you can see here how, from 0 to 44.12 is black, 44. So north is black, northeast is black, east is black. But boom, I know that southeast is the way I want to look. And so these things look different. Every time you will illuminate it from a different direction, it appears different. So we're cutting out most of the data and then just refining it and using an antenna. It's kind of like tuning an antenna to the old TV stations where you'd have to get it lined up just right. And so once you get it lined up just right, then the magic happens and you can see things then. So it's a very easy method of visualizing this.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Chuck, how do you know what direction to point it at? I think you mentioned it briefly in the presentation, but like why?
Well, I started out looking at every direction to see which one showed the greatest amount of faults and fractures and the greatest amount of detail to me. And it always came out to that southeast or the northwest up there is what it is, and so that is the focus of the energy from the great push from the south and east that created these Appalachian Mountains. It came from the south and east. And I think there's a correlation between the two. But even down in Texas, though, south and east seems to work. So everywhere we go, that's the one I check first, is southeast. And that gives me the best images.
But it could be that in different geographies, depending on the geological features, the direction that you're going to want to look at changes, right?
Oh yeah, and you want to look at all 8 of them just to make sure you're not missing something. So that's what I'll do, go through, and then it's just easy to black out southeast and then open up south, and then give that white, and then you look at the image then too, and then see what you see. So this is about a visual thing. I thought for sure this was going to be a good tool for us in machine learning, and it didn't help at all. And so I was very disappointed in that, but hey, it creates some beautiful images. And like I said, I still don't quite know what's creating all these images at this point in time. I've got some theories, but the interaction of the ice and the soil, there had to have been a bit of liquefaction going on at the time. If you get any kind of energy, radiating to the surface, and then that ice then will flow down a little bit into a crack or a crevice, and then you're seeing this. But we're also seeing it in areas that never had any glaciation. We're seeing it in areas that were lake lacustrine after the glacier. So it's still, there's a lot to learn about this. And so I would like to get this out there so we can get more and more people looking at it and trying to come up with what the hell are we looking at. So that's my goal.
Great. Well, we really appreciate you coming out, Chuck, and sharing your experience with 3Dep data and your very novel and innovative use case for it. I know oil and gas isn't necessarily the hero of the scene these days, but it is still a primary pillar of our energy economy, and it drives what we all do every day. Without it, I'm not sure we would be here.
Yeah.
So finding and doing it with less impact and in a more cost-effective way, I think it's a really cool use of LiDAR, and goes to show that you know, the 3D data can not just serve as a foundational building block for analytics, but as a foundational building block for enhancing our economy. Al, did you have something you'd like to ask or contribute? Carlin?
Oh, yeah, hang in there. Um, just have a million different screens open. I'm happy. I mean, this is a great presentation. In that, you know, as you said, Jason, it really does highlight a different way of looking at the LiDAR data. These terrain indicators are, you know, something that we really need to develop and make more commonplace than we have in the past. And, you know, the Esri tools are really helping that to develop.
Mhm.
So I think this was a really interesting and valuable presentation. The other thing, of course, is that these very same indicators, we can use them to augment and enhance our flow direction grids, as well as you know, surface water modeling. So
Absolutely. That's a really good point, Al. And the 3D HP and the hydrography program are hard at work doing just that. Very, very well observed.
Yeah, thank you, Al.
yeah, sorry about that. I just had a million different screens open and trying to find the right one.
Awesome. Well, I always like to schedule these for an hour and a half to give space for conversation and questions. Does anyone have any other questions for Chuck or observations on how this data is being used? Cool. I don't see anything, but I'll go ahead and I will be sharing this out to the NSGIC knowledge base within the next couple of days. I really appreciate you all hopping on. A big thrust of the NSGIC 3D for the Nation program is highlighting interesting use cases and building excitement around 3D data to generate awareness and improve our ability to fund and continue the acquisition, production, and distribution of this foundational data set. So if anyone has any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. My name is Jordan, and I am the NSGIC 3D for the Nation program manager. I'm going to stop Chuck share, and I'm going to share my screen back out again just to wrap up the reminders. Please join the 3D user group on LinkedIn. I submitted a chat in the chat, and if you are interested in more content like this, check out the NSGIC 3D for the Nation interest group. Thanks again for everyone who was able to make it out, and I look forward to seeing you all next time.
Take care.
Thank you.